series. My name is Loa Orowana Yara, and I will be hosting this series today for you. But before we start the webinar, I just wanted to remind you that you can always support our show by going directly to the Omakase Show profile on X, and then you can see this button with cash and send your donations in Ethereum, which is always highly appreciated. And today we have an amazing artist with a quite international background and quite multimedia one. We have nygilia. Hi, and thank you so much for joining me today. Can you please tell us more about yourself and how you got into this space?
Sure. Hey everyone, I'm nygilia. How I got into space. So first things first, I'm from New York. I played basketball for many years before I became an artist. And as for myself, I am a new media artist that creates experiences using culture, gaming, and fantasy. A lot of times in my upbringing, I grew up in a very multicultural household. My mother's side is from Germany and Italy, and my father's side is West Indian and Jamaican. So it's like a very diverse, vibrant household in terms of food, in terms of language, music, everything. So it kind of relates a lot to my practice, how I tap into these different cultural elements that do elevate through gaming type conversations and how we could pursue and create identities in these different perspectives. So that's kind of the world I build with my work.
I want to dive into your creative process. I just want to share my screen to present your work on your website. So in general, I know that you do a lot of mixed media stuff. You use both 3D, and there is a lot of inspiration that you kind of got from gaming and in general, the international background that you obviously have. So yeah, let's maybe dive into this part of it.
Sure. So this is part of my first time using AI and JavaScript, and it's called Echoes of Eden Gen 1. And what I loved about this project is I really wanted to utilize, and this is the first time when AI art started to become a conversation in the NFT space, and specifically with Dolly. That was the first main model that was being discussed, and I was like, okay, I didn't want to just do prompts. I like mixing mediums, so I was like, okay, then I kept kind of hearing about everyone and even friends using code and developing projects out of that. But I'm a very figurative person. I like having human identity in clash or in conversation with visual elements. So I was like, okay, I want to test and use processing with the images I make in Dali and combine them with these different abstract shapes that I create in processing through JavaScript, and then I just kind of combine them. So I was just randomizing and adding random shapes and textures, and then finalizing it in Photoshop to create these very unique and vibrant pieces. And the reason why I wanted to do Echoes of Eden Gen 1 is I wanted to have this idea of Eden, this place of Eden revolving around Afrofuturistic people, or people that are futuristic that do come from Afro and Caribbean backgrounds. And a lot of times we do get placed into a bubble of what type of specific art language we create or speak. And I want coding and this type of conversation around AI and figurative creations to elevate what that could mean. And so for me, it's always about experimenting and be like, maybe we can make new questions, or maybe we can evolve another practice out of this. But for me personally, it was a fun project that ended up being greater than I thought it would do. It ended up selling out on Foundation. And, I felt like this was a very first step direction into me using code or base or code software in correspondence with my character creations and identity. So this was kind of the first steps of my practice with that.
That sounds really exciting. And what I also want to ask, this is kind of my question. I think I ask a lot of artists regarding this one. The
Mm-hmm.
color choices, yours are quite vibrant, but then also their combination is incredible in a sense that, especially in this series, you have a lot of different colors, but they all kind of match together in a really pretty way.
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps you can explain what served as an inspiration to this combination of colors.
I would say the inspiration is my background. You know, um, when you look at Caribbean colors, when you see Carnival, when you look at sort of the ancestry and roots of our textiles, our patterns, And even when I look at from my grandmother's side, having family like ancestry coming back into Romania. And then she shows me all these different patterns and textures. It's kind of like it all comes together as one unique piece. So I love colors because it is a reflection of who I am. I'm not just, mixed race. I'm many races in one. And to me, like I like tapping into that element of conversation, and even just the idea of that Afrofuturism is more than just one lane of a conversation. It's multiple lanes, and that's what I wanted to kind of create that metaphor with the colors I use. Is that our identity is very vibrant and expressive, and it's powerful, and that's how I felt when I was making all the pieces, and when I was curating them together. I wanted them all to be powerful, but all work together at the same time.
Just in case for the listeners and also for myself, I googled how it looks, the Caribbean Carnival,
Hmm.
and wow, it's gorgeous. Like I love it so
It's so fun,
much.
yeah.
It is like elevated Victoria's Secret show. Like even better, the color choices. Oh, just surreal. It's incredible.
Hmm.
Well, and if we go slightly back to the mediums that you use, it is basically coding and then 3D stuff. Is this correct?
So with Echoes of Eden, it's the so it's the DALI prompt, so the JPEG of the image, and then I combined it into processing with like a shape algorithm. So I was playing a lot with randomization and shapes to create these very abstract pieces with the prompt. And then for this project, which was part of a residency I was in for Wild XYZ, this was also another way of testing code, but it was more built-in code with a program called Touch Designer, and then using that same system of adding the prompt, but now more animated. And Touch Designer has the VFX program to built in where you can have nodes sort of integrate with one another and create these very interesting surreal pieces. And what I wanted to do is have these now with Echoes of Eden, where it was more about the shapes. Now the human is like the reason the piece can animate that way. So it's taking the pixels of the prompt and the node and algorithm that I built in Touch Designer to have these very water-like animations. And the reason those ripples happen is because it's taking the pixels from the image and sort of like repeating it through a process, which I thought was really fun. Again, very experimental, but the way it came out, I felt was very energetic and had this like spirit about it. Like the water in the Caribbean is very special. It's powerful. We have a strong connection to water, and that's what I was like representing when creating these different identities through a fluid motion.
Wow. And so I do, well, my guess, I'm not sure, that currently you are still working on this technology where algorithm recreates the movements that is connected to the pixels of the artwork. Is this correct? Because the recent artwork that you shared with me, I guess, is doing the same process.
Yes. So I love that. Like it took me a while to figure out what I was going to be when I use code, because originally like I've always done like illustration, I do graphic design, like I always had like a lot of hands-on work, but in terms of the art that speaks to me, I like the experimental process. I like, breaking rules and getting messy about it to see what could evolve out of it. And then I've started to kind of have this habit of using the artwork that I have already and sort of like having that be part of the language in the node or code process. So like you said, taking the pixels from the image and like evolving it into something new. That's something I love doing because it's post-humanistic. It's thinking forward for an identity or a person, and that, humans and nature are not far off than we think. Like they go hand in hand, and that's what I felt when I was making these pieces.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Well, one question that I have in mind is basically me and Nygilia, we've been working on one project that is about to come out. I don't know, maybe in a few weeks. And when you were telling me about your background, you mentioned that you were a professional basketball player. And
Mhm.
I do believe that this sport played a lot of role in your life. And in general, I can see that you're highly well organized, really disciplined in this sort of way. So maybe you can elaborate more about the basketball culture and in general how the sport shaped your vision and your personality?
Yeah, of course. I feel like basketball really taught me how to be patient. Even though it's a very fast-paced sport, there's so much that you have to learn and grow with, like learning how to deal with different personalities, learning how to communicate about what you're doing, how to like lead a team, because I've been a captain before, learning how to know what your players or what your teammates do best in a situation with, not just because you like it, like what's going to be the best for everyone. And I think that way of thinking in my brain, and even this is like I started basketball when I was like 10 years old. And I think over time I realized I couldn't just do like a basic job coming out of sport. Like it had to be something that always challenged me because sports makes you like a faster thinker. And when you the more you play, like I think the more you understand people and you understand how to also push yourself forward as well as an individual. And for me, I was like, I've always loved art. You know, I've always appreciated what art is. I played a lot of video games even growing up with my uncles. And like they're the ones that actually introduced me to Final Fantasy and Legend of Zelda. They were the two favorite games because they were so ahead in how they treated culture and how they treated you as a character, integrating with people of different identities and how you learn where they come from and how they sit in that place. And so when I make these different artworks, I'm like, okay, I want to invite people into this world that I'm building, and maybe they'll have their own thoughts or questions, but the fact that they are interested and want to learn more is like my golden ticket of that. I like it when two people can look at my artwork and get different perspectives. I don't know, it creates a conversation, and I think that's the joy of being an artist. It's like you want people to talk about what could they actually mean. And I think like even artists in the world like that they study like Basquiat, Banksy, Frida Kahlo, like all these different creators, right, that are famous, but there always are researchers and contemporary curators always questioning about what they actually meant about a certain piece or subject. Like Yayoi Kusama, you know, all these different creators. And I love the fact that if you can challenge perspective, then you're going to grow as a creative and grow the story of what it is to be an artist and how we can challenge artistry. And I think that's what I feel like I'm becoming as a person is, you know, making works that reflect me regardless of the however a curator or a collector feels like this is what I represent, and if it grows naturally and it gains that interest, then I know it organically did because I made it grow that way and I chose it to be that story. So for me, that's what's exciting about all these worlds I build. People get the opportunity to really learn who I am and ask those questions. And yeah, it's just, I think it's just fun. It's less stress to have to feel like you do to do a specific thing. I think when you're building a world, it can all connect as one and you don't really got to worry about it.
But I have so many thoughts. I have like a first one about like traditional artists. They've been always kind of telling the idea that they create like 10 artworks and then curators or galleries just tell them that 5 are not sellable, therefore we don't need them at all, and 5 are sellable, which makes sense. You can always predict the collector's choice. You can
Mm-hmm.
always realize what would sell better and what would sell worse. But this is
Mm-hmm.
also kind of a big stagnation because if artists follow in the preference of collectors, then I think it just becomes like really centered around commercial part of the world rather than creative. Another part that I have in mind, like around sports, I also like used to be super sporty as a kid. I still am, and I had a lot of competitions. And I just heard recently, I've been watching a podcast, and one guy he said that if a kid in his life has this moment where they feel like they can win, they go and they compete, and they may not win, but they can at least feel it. These kids are more likely to grow up with a passion and motivation to do something in life, whereas the kids that didn't have a lot of sports in their life and this competitiveness, they can feel like it doesn't make sense to overwork or to like to be out there and like working too much on something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I can relate. I think like the sport part has also shaped my character in these ways. And whew, okay. another part of it is that because I opened the Astro Dream collection, I feel like it is highly gaming environment. It feels like a gaming space, like when you play a video game, this is the place where you would be at.
Mhm.
Was this, did gaming serve as an inspiration for this collection or not?
Yes, it did. So this was, and this was like a long time ago when I built like Astro Dreams collection, and I wanted to tap not necessarily into like Afrofuturism, but like sort of an Afro fantasy combination. And so I used VR headset, the tool Open Brush, which originally used to be Google's Tilt Brush until they open sourced it. And what I would do is like paint with these like 3D paint brushes. And it's kind of crazy because I don't I don't see painting as like my strength, like actual take a easel paint that way, but I love painting in a headset. Don't know what it is, but like I really enjoy that process more for me. And because of that, I think I'm able to, because of video games I played growing up, I understand like navigation and like a place you would explore. So every time when I was making these pieces, there's no easel, no canvas, it's just gravity and air. And like you having to like form and make these worlds. And what was really cool about being in this program is that you can also record and photograph. So what I did was for every piece, I set it up like a sort of like a roller coaster ride and like had the camera move at a specific speed. So it felt like when you'd watch it, you're going through this motion or this journey. And I got a lot of inspiration of that from like Disney World and seeing how they like built their rides and the motion that they create and why they create it that way. And that actually helped me drive when I was recording these pieces for how they were going to present themselves. I wasn't going to make anything too like fast or flashy. Like everything that I used is going to be specific and move in a motion where it feels like a dream. And so that's how I got to make like Astro dreams come together, and really be a beautiful project. And I'm hoping my dream is to make a video game one day. So it's like I keep this in my folio back pocket, in case, clients come one day and want to do something. So to me it's a good starting point when I was using VR for my work.
Even like this diagonal artworks, this one on the right, this one middle one, and the top left, they literally look as if you are watching the video game character just navigating the space.
Mm-hmm.
In a sense, like you're watching from character's eyes as if you were playing. Also, one thing that got me curious, you mentioned using VR headsets to create, to kind of to make brush strokes. How it works? Like, like be as simple as you can, as if you were explaining it to a child, because I'm like really not good with
Yeah.
technology in advanced ways. So you are putting it on, then what is next?
So you put the headset on, you have it, and then there's two controllers that come with it. And what happens is when you're in the open brush program, it kind of sets up the hand motion part is the most important thing, because one hand would have like sort of this virtual easel, and the other is like a paintbrush tip at the end. And so what you would do is you would scroll through, and there's like different patterns, choices. There's even some that are animated, and you can really play around with the color, the depth, the lighting. Like it feels like you're in Unreal Engine, but in a paint mode in headset. So the best way I can describe it is imagine if you have a virtual easel and a virtual paintbrush, and you're just making things in the air, and it comes out beautifully. So it's almost like you're in it. It's
Wow.
like it feels like a fantasy world. Like if you had two little tools that aren't real, but you can paint things and you see it happen. And that's kind of how the open brush experience is.
Is there a correlation on how good you can paint on a normal like paper with a pencil and how you can paint using VR headset?
There is a program, I forget the name of it, but there is like a virtual version of painting on an easel. Like they actually have like an easel in the virtual worlds. you have a paintbrush, you have an actual um, thing like paint thing tool, and then you I guess like with the motion they make it feel like you're painting strokes on the easel. So there is a program that actually has it too, but I like the dystopia of the virtual way because you don't know what you'll end up making, and everything is you have to turn it into 3D in a way. Like even though the paintbrush, like the paint strokes are a 3D form of a paint brush stroke, you still have to like add layers to make it pop. So it's like you have to even dim down the color saturation so that it can create some depth in the shape. Or if you're building a house, you don't just use one color, you got to use multiple so that it feels like a home versus just flat and be done. That's how I was able to figure it out and have Astro Dreams because it's all like a lot of different paint layers and shapes to then feel like it's a 3D space. When in reality, it's just a lot of 3D brush strokes to make a 3D object feel more alive.
Yeah, I got it. I got it. It sounds like a really nice experience. I wouldn't try it myself because when I paint, I feel like I'm too bad to actually like then look at it even.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to about exhibiting digital art because you've been exhibiting during Art Basel Miami and then also a lot of incredible events, NFT Now Gateway. I just recently checked that you were exhibiting in 2023 during Rock Radio exhibition in Miami as well, and I was there. So basically, I should have seen your
Oh,
artwork even like 2 years ago or so. So in general, I want to know your experience as a digital artist exhibiting digital art because it is quite hard as a person who've been putting together exhibitions. It's like technically it just takes a lot of effort.
mm-hmm.
And in general, if we're looking at your artworks, how do you envision the best way to showcase them?
I think from my personal experience, the best way to showcase digital art is truly based on the environment it's going to be. So I've had to I think from my perception, I think the best way to do it is either it's going to be like a very contemporary nice space. Like I've been seeing now pictures from Art Basel, Switzerland, and like if it's going to be presented in like a gallery space, it needs to have that space come to life. Like it needs to have these different interactive pieces. It needs to be displayed in a way where all the works really work well together to then have this unique environment. So it's like even if the walls are blank, the digital art's going to do the work personally. But then my favorite is when it's outdoors in nature. So you can have like the projections, you can have the um, map projection on like objects or like different posters and have like the art actually integrate with physical objects. To me, I enjoy that because I think there's something very interesting between having different types of screen displays and like nature or something rustic and earthy. I think there's something very beautiful and like dystopian about it, but I think digital art like it's kind of like an organism in its own way that's growing in the contemporary art world, and when we see it in like real life in those outdoor spaces, there's something beautiful about it, and it's starting to become more and more normalized, especially in cities and in even in local areas too. You're starting to see people invest more in digital works to then exist in an everyday space. So yeah, I think it's one of the two. Either it's going to be a very highly curated gallery space that lets the art really pop, or it's going to be outdoors or in like a nature centric place that lets the art really like sit with the with nature. So it's like the plants, the trees, anything. I like either one are like the best choices from my experience.
Yeah, I guess a really nice example of nature and digital art would be Rafi Canado. He did it like 2 years ago or so during Art Basel Miami. It it looked really nice. I saw one piece when I was in Bangkok. I just forgot. I think the name of the artist is something like the nickname on Twitter would be Essendorf. And so because Asia is quite hot climate, it is quite humid, but then they also had an ability to showcase
Mm-hmm.
artworks outside, and it looked incredible in this like kind of tropical environments. So I really see your point. I think it's a really beautiful combination. But then also the other problem is that it is a digital screen. It is basically a TV, and if the sunshine is like too high, then you don't see anything, which
Yeah.
is also like a trouble. So I really wanted to check what would be your tips for emerging artists, but in a perspective of this exploration of new mediums and new tools and in general technology.
For emergent artists, what I recommend is, for me, I listen a lot. Like I do a lot of listening and watching. And that's how I've been able to learn and grow since 2021. Like I came in this space knowing like nobody. I think I was getting bored of working remotely during COVID and I was like, right, I need something to like do or spend money with, or at least even just to try something new and see what happens. Because I've never like made art for myself to sell or to have my own art career per se. Like I was either doing design or I was doing branding for other people or other projects, but I'd never done something for myself personally. So with this space, it allowed me to really just go and listen and understand how to be an artist through digital art, and I even like watch peers as well and how they've been able to, practice and extend their craft, learning to like talk with one another, help each other out. That's a really important thing that has evolved, especially amongst us as artists, like in the NFT space, is like being able to talk and understand one another and see like what we're trying to do or trying to build, and everyone's pretty open about hearing your thoughts or opinions. It's quite nice and healthy that way. And we never had that in the fine art world per se. It's very competitive, gate kept in some aspects, versus this is very open field. So I always say like I learn and listen, and then go with where you're wanted. Go with where the tribe speaks to you more of people, and grow with them as you continue making work. And regardless of how the space shifts, you're still an artist regardless of NFTs or not. I think this space can allow you to understand digital art more and the ecosystem around it and how you can utilize it in different ways, but never stop creating and being an artist for art. That's one advice I give to anyone that's up and coming and wants to integrate more into the NFT space. You're still an artist, still grow, but also learn and listen to what's happening in the art world overall when it comes to digital work.
It really makes a lot of sense. And even when I started working at this space during NFT boom, and I believe when we were all trying to show that we are different from traditional art world, that we have royalties, we don't have big commissions, and we don't also have copyright. Everything is like copyright zero and all of the stuff. But then like 5 years later, I think a lot of things changed, and we are kind of going back to what we really didn't enjoy like 5 years ago. And then we are also taking all of this like capitalistic stuff back, and then decentralization is also getting like centralized.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, there are still a lot of people who are fighting still for all this like Web3 things, like create, read, and own. Like the owning part is something that a lot of people are still here for. Well, okay. I want to ask you a final question, and then we can also talk slightly about the project we've been working on together.
Mm-hmm.
What are your upcoming plans? What are you working on right now? And in general, what we can expect to see from you?
Yeah, so right now I am on the final motions actually of my PhD project. So that's been 4 years of long work, and hoping like all goes good in September, and I present my viva. So right now it's kind of like finalizing all those things in my thesis. But in terms of like the digital art, like contemporary projects, I've been continuing to grow Alzeno World projects, currently like with Mega ETH and Rarible. And that's something that's very close to me. You know how you kind of showed the VR work. that was actually part of my master's prior, is like making VR pieces and animating, because I didn't want to do frame by frame animation in my course. So I discovered what you can do with virtual reality and made that my final project. And during that project, I created this Afrofuturistic spirit named Dalzena, who I started with in 2019, brought into NFTs and kind of never looked back. And now I'm starting to like expand her story and more so her side characters. That will be like a pretty key part in her journey. But what I love about when you look at gaming worlds or stories, you're never a fan of the main character. You're a fan of side characters. Even if you look at your favorite TV show, it's not the protagonist. It might be the anti-villain that's your favorite, or it might be someone that you don't expect to end up being your favorite character. And that's what I love about building a story. And I've taken my time with it, and so now I'm in the process of like hopefully to release like a larger scale collection with her, and then beginning to write the stories and have that actually exist after so long. But I wanted to really like hone my time into that while I was still also doing my PhD stuff, to make sure it comes at the right time when I know this is what I want to explore in the story. And then yeah, in terms of like even contemporary work, we'll talk about our project together, but then also like continuing to develop my skills with touch designer and JavaScript, and learning to create a more embedded projects, but then hopefully getting my first like proper on-chain project this year at least some point. So to me, like that's kind of where my brain's been sitting in terms of making.
That sounds really exciting. You are in the middle of finishing your PhD, which sounds like a lot of work.
It is.
And in general, it is for sure. And I try to combine both storytelling and creation of avatars, and then also the gaming environment just for one project is extremely impressive. Well, I just want to thank you so much for your time and for this webinar. I believe it gave me a lot of understanding on your creative process, and I do believe it's quite complex and that you put a lot of thought into every piece that you are creating. And thank you so much for your time.
Yes, thank you so much, Elena, for having me and for this show. It was really, truly an honor. And yeah, I'm excited to keep growing with you guys and see you all hopefully in real life and whatever events we cross paths in.
Yeah, staying in touch.